What's up, everybody? Yeah, this is Rick Lobo, and I'm coming to you uh, from San Jose, California. And once again, thank you for being a follower of the Pinche Lowriders YouTube channel. I want to bring to you today my new podcast. This will be the first episode of a series of episodes. I'll be talking about cruising. I'll be talking about what sparked my interest, pretty much, and some stories from the days I was cruising. But today I want to dedicate this first episode to my mom, Sally Martin. Rest in peace. She passed away from cancer in 2019, October 2nd. This year is going to be 5 years. And, it's funny because I've told the story many times before, and I'm going to tell it again, of kind of how my first like real experience cruising. I was a kid, and I don't think we were really cruising, but more or less it was single to mile. And if you guys know anything about San Jose, California, we had one of the largest single to mile festivals in the United States. Um, I was young. I don't really remember how old I actually was. Probably about 6 or 7 years old. Small enough to where I had to, I had to hold on to my mom's pocket or belt loop as we're walking through the crowd. Back in the day, Cinco de Mayo in San Jose, it was a very big festival and event. They had music and beer and everything else. There was packs of probation officers and parole officers and cops, about 5 or 10 in a group everywhere you went. They were stopping people, the homies and people with tattoos. And even though they sold alcohol and everything, it was just like, it was shoulder to shoulder every year. It was a big festival. And so the funny part is my mom used to drive, and like I said, so I am currently 46. So let's just say this is like 40 years ago. My mom drove a Datsun hatchback, and if you know, Datsuns are now Nissans. But anyhow, so we had a hatchback, and leaving the Cinco de Mayo festival, I remember, we were barely moving. We're on Santa Clara Street at the time, and I'm sitting in the hatchback. So my mom had the hatchback wide open, and I'm just like sitting back there. Mind you, this is before all the seatbelt laws and stuff like that. And so I'm just sitting there facing backwards pretty much. And there's an Impala. I remember it was red. I remember it was either a 63 or 64. And it was funny because my mom's friend goes, yeah, those cars go up and down. They can go up and down. And obviously I'm a little kid. I don't really comprehend what she's talking about. And so, of course, he made the all popular, hand gesture to move the car up and down, and the car starts moving up and down. And honestly, that's a very vivid memory for me as a kid. With one of my first experiences with the lowrider cars. It didn't dawn on me until later that one of my cousins, his dad, had a lowrider truck. He had a step side, and he was probably before my time, I think. But at one point, he was a member of San Jose Step Sides. And rest in peace to you also, Uncle Mike. But he had a 72 step side, and he used to pick up my cousin on Fridays, every other Friday, and when he still had that truck running when I was little. He would pull up in the truck. I went a couple places with them in this truck, and he had, like he had a phone in the truck and a TV and all these different things. And so as a kid, I was exposed to the Lowriders. I wasn't, really 100% into car shows or anything like that. It was just an interesting thing. I was always, I just remember kind of, and to be fair and honest, I remember I used to want a Toyota Tacoma from Back to the Future. So the car, the truck that he wanted, I wanted one of those. And for the longest time, I wanted, I was into the Bigfoots and everything else like that. I remember building model cars. Of course, I had Hot Wheels like crazy and everything else like that. But it really wasn't until maybe about 14, 15 years old when I actually, picked up a Lowrider magazine from, the local store, liquor store or whatever. And I think that's when, my interest really, really started in the lowrider game and just reading. This is when you could actually read all the articles and learn something. Of course, now we have YouTube, so if you want to learn anything, that's where you go. But for me, started grabbing the lowrider magazines, and it was funny because, like, at first it was like my mom was like, "Oh, you're getting the magazines for the girls," and because of course we had actual models on the covers, and so thinking about that, and I would keep my magazine in good condition, and I started hanging them on the wall, my collection, one after another, and I'd get money and get a subscription, and then sometimes by the time I got it in the mail, I would be able to look at it at the store already, and so on and so forth. But so as I got a little older, a couple years went by, and I got my license. And at one point, my mom had the Dodge Ram 50. It's a mini truck. And prior to that, I had already been hanging out. Obviously, I was involved in gangs and all this other stuff. But there was times when we would go downtown, and one of my friends, he's like, "Let's go downtown. Let's go out there." And so I started going downtown and seeing the cruising and hanging out there. Take the bus out there, and you had to leave by a certain time because the bus didn't run late or 24 hours at the time. And there'd be many times when, we'll be out there walking around, cars be cruising, people out there. It's a big party. And one of the things I would always tell people is that cruising was just like a big old party. Obviously, there wasn't no cell phones. Everything revolved around just being out there. And this is before, obviously. So I'd probably say maybe 93, 94, probably when I first started like hanging out downtown. Like I was walking and I was, looking at all the people out there. We had all the homegirls out there, everybody cruising cars and everything like that. And every so often we get lucky, like in my high school years, I get so lucky before I got a car and my license, but we run into one of our friends and they had a car, or they already had a license, or they were just driving. And so we would be lucky to get into a car. And mind you, we're not in a lowrider, we're just in a car. And that's what cruising was back then. Whether you were in a lowrider or not, you'd be like 5, 6 people lapping it, everything else in a car, and you were out there cruising. We had in San Jose, it was from Santa Clara Street all the way down to King and Story. And you would, of course, encounter all the main things was worrying about was all the checkpoints. So they would put in a checkpoint, and right there pretty much between first, I want to say not first, second and third. So there'd be a checkpoint. And depending on, the time, they usually start setting that up, and then basically they'd sit there and stare in your car and see, whatever reason they could pull people over to check if people are drinking or, stuff like that. And mind you, this is still before there were seatbelt laws. So At this point, they're just looking to ticket people, anybody. And there would be one on Santa Clara Street, and maybe sometimes, um, you know, there'd be one farther down, more towards King and Story. But that I can remember, we would just go out there and have fun. So the catch would be, like I said, we'd have to be out there, have fun, whatever, then get back to get on the bus to get home. Because I lived in South San Jose, and so there was like one bus that would take us out there, and if we missed it, we were screwed. So we'd have to find someone to give us a ride home, or we end up spending the night somewhere and then getting home in the morning. And that was in the beginning, and that was just the basics right there. That's just how we ran around, and it was like a party but outside. And I had all my friends. We kicked it close by my house, and we were up to no good and doing other stuff. But I got bored. I got bored of staring at my friends and playing spades and playing dominoes and everything all the time, and just sitting there. Like, I wanted to go. I just felt that I needed the vibe. I wanted to see where the females were at. I want to go out. So ultimately, my weekends consisted of going cruising. As soon as I was able to drive, I would take, as I mentioned, my mom's truck. She basically gave it to me, but it was a little mini truck, pickup truck. Is all stock, and I put stereo system in it and everything because it had an AM radio only. So somebody gave me a stereo, and I remember, well, not gave it to me, but I bought the stereo and I learned how to put it in, and got speakers and from wherever I could, amps, stuff like that. And so I'd be bumping in this little mini truck, and I go cruising. And so when I first, that was like my first beginning of doing that, and I was 16. And once in a while I'd go out there, and if I did go out there, I was out there with Brown Impressions, and they were, car club. Most of their members were in South San Jose and either went to high school or lived close by where I was at. I even had a lowrider bike. But ultimately what I want to, get into is just how it really was when we were cruising back then in the 90s. And yeah, I'm not that old where I can talk about anything earlier than that. And eventually we'll get into all that. And hopefully down the road, I'll get some guests in here that were cruising, at different eras and different times in different areas. And I want to talk with them and, hear stories of how it was when we were actually cruising on the weekends, because it was what we did. So as for that, that's kind of how I got into, most of the cruising era. There was a point when I didn't have a car, or we cruised with other people once in a while. If someone had a lowrider and we were gonna go cruising, that's what we did. And back then, Cinco de Mayo was the biggest cruising weekend you can go. Deal with the police and everything else like that. They were always harassing us. People were either walking or driving, and they had the checkpoints and motorcycles and horses and everything else on the streets. And it was really the biggest weekend, the best weekend to be out there, but it was also the most stressful weekend because it was constant drama. It was constant, harassment, and that continued throughout the years when I was out there cruising. It was always like that. And that's the whole thing. It's not nearly as nice and simple as it is today. Even with the laws now and everything have changed, and thank God for that. But yeah, it was pretty complicated because we were basically breaking the law, and I ain't gonna lie, we were up to no good half the time, but we were just out there to have fun, and so for me, I want to bring it back to the early years. So for my 18th birthday, one of the things, my my grandmother, like, well, you're going to be 18 and, what do you want for your birthday? And my grandmother had a 1977 Chevy Impala. It was a 2-door with the big triangle back window, and basically it's a kind of a glass house, box Chevy, and it was her first car she ever bought off the lot. And when she learned how to drive later on in life, but it had been sitting for a few years. And I said, I want the car. I want the Impala. And so that's leading up to my 18th birthday. I did get the car started. It had, my grandfather had a bunch of junk in the trunk. There was like literally storing all kinds of stuff. And so I had to clean it all out. I made a mess. I remember I just made a big old mess trying to change out the transmission fluid. I just basically spilled it all over myself. And I always helped my uncles with cars and stuff like that. So I had some mechanical experience, and we also had a book. So, back in the day, we didn't have YouTube, but they had a book for every car, and it would cover like 1976 to 1981. And if you needed to know something, you bought that book and it would tell you how to do it. So, utilizing what I knew about cars and, utilizing the book and stuff, I got this 1977 Chevy Impala, had a 305 V8 and bench seat. It was completely sun, faded. Interior was faded, everything. And I got this car running. At first, it stayed. The first time I got it running, the funny part was I remember taking it out, and it had, the old tires and big 15-inch tires, and they were all old, been sitting there forever in the sun. And I'm going to take it for a ride. No radio, no nothing. And I remember it was me and my cousin, and we went out and we went downtown, and we almost got jumped because they never seen that car before, and it was ragged as hell. And anyways, we almost got jumped, and I don't know. People, they just thought we weren't from San Jose, and or whatever they thought we were. And like I said, so that was kind of funny. And of course, so went out there and drove my car for the first time. And like I said, it was freshly dirty and old and worn out. And I remember that night, that was the first night I drove it, and I got a flat tire on the freeway, and I had no spare. And I had to call my grandfather, and so my grandfather had to bring me an old crappy tire they had in the backyard, and I did that. I had to deal with all that. And then so then the next thing I remember on this car was I needed new tires. So I had to go to the wrecking yard. I didn't want the big giant 15-inch tires on there with the wheels and stuff stock. So I found figured out what was the bolt pattern, and I went to Pick and Pull, and I got me some 14-inch. Basically got wheels off of probably a Regal or something. It still fit. And then I went and got me some tires, and like I was working at the time. I was 18, and so I went, like, basically I was spending all my check on getting this car ready to go cruising. And so the first tires I bought with these 14-inch rims were the 175/75 R14s. And then I drove it like that with no hubcaps until I was able to get more money and then go to the wrecking yard and go get some spoke hubcaps. And I think I had like 2 from a Regal and 2 from a Cutlass, and I just made sure one side was one side and one side was the other. And so for the longest time, a lot of people were like, is that a Regal or is that a Cutlass? And nah, that's a Chevy, that's an Impala, and then eventually, soon after that, then it was one thing there. I remember one of my uncle was like kind of making fun of me because the car looked funny because everybody thought it was on hydraulics. I hadn't lowered it yet. I just put the wheels on it. So then that was another step next. What we do? Well, my uncle had a torch, and I didn't cut it. I just heated up the coils, easy and quick. We heated up the coils. We took the shocks out and pushed the car down. Got it pretty level, and it was lowered. Never put the shocks back in, and that's it. That's all I cruised. I had gas brake dip all day long. I had broke ghetto hydraulics. You know, it's just like if I wanted the car to bounce, I just press the gas or hit the brakes. Pretty much one of those things, and went from there. And then I sanded the car down and I primered it. And then I happened to buy the wrong primer, which was like a yellow primer. Wasn't gray, wasn't black, wasn't red. I got the whole gallon and it was a yellow primer. I sanded the car down and ended up primering it at my uncle's house, my other uncle, and because he had a spray gun and everything. And so then I had a yellow primered 77 Impala, lowered on hubcaps. So I had that for a while, put it in the system, drove around, cruised, just had a good ass time. That's all we did. That's all we did for a long time was every weekend, go cruising, go cruising, go cruising. And it was probably, it was fun. It literally was probably some of the funnest stuff I've ever done in my life. And, of course, your alternator goes out, or I remember I put a cherry bomb glass pack on it, and I had that car for years. But then, of course, I had tickets for cruising. I had tickets for having a small steering wheel. I had no U-turn. You name it. I mean, like I got pulled over so many times in that car, and we got searched. They were like, looking for weapons. They used to search us all the time. I got searched twice. I got pulled over 2 times in like 5 minutes. Like I got pulled over. They searched. They didn't find nothing. Let me go. I literally went down the street, made a left at a light, and then I got pulled over again. I was like, dude, you guys just pulled me over. Like I literally just, and same thing, pulled us out the car, search us. It was always like that. Like literally, there wasn't almost a night that went by that I didn't get pulled over on a weekend cruising, and then they searching our car. And now today, yeah, okay, well, you have rights, this, that, and everything else. But I'm telling you right now, they did it to everybody. And this is, like I said, this is mid-90s. 95, matter of fact, because that's when I turned 18. And, so it would be, one night after the other. We go out there Friday night, we go out there Saturday night, and then we go out during the day on a Sunday. And cruising all Santa Clara Street, First and Santa Clara. We cruise all the way, it'd be bumper to bumper. There was, many days. I mean, sometimes I would get from Santa Clara Street to King and then decide, do I want to go all the way back from King to Santa Clara? Or I would sit there and I'd go, you know what? I'd jump on the freeway and let's start all over from the back of the cruising. So I want to see different people, because I'm like, so you're pretty much stuck cruising and it's bumper to bumper, and you're cruising with the same cars to the same spot. And because it's so bumper to bumper, you're only pretty much stuck around the same people. And see, back then, San Jose was one of the big cruising spots for over here. So one of the amazing things was you would meet people from everywhere. So, sit there with cars with nothing but women in there, and you go, hey, what's up? You're hollering at them, and where you from? They're like, oh, I'm from Fresno. I'm from Stockton. I'm from, Modesto, Sacramento, and Redwood City. It was like, okay. Now, mind you, these places are all an hour or 2 or maybe more from San Jose, and they would cruise all night long. And they'd be like, oh, well, we'll come back tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. Okay. So they would cruise all night, drive all the way back home, and come all the way back to San Jose. That's how it was in the 90s. That's how cruising really was. Like, it was, we in San Jose, we were the place to be for all the people over here. So with, that was always the issue, was like, who was out here, who's not out here. If you have a lady, then you gotta be careful with what cars you talk to, because then they'll be like, oh, I know your lady and this and that and blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, well, remember, we don't have cell phones, but we had pagers. So sometimes it'd be like, hey, what's up? And then next thing you know, like, I don't know, about 15, 20 minutes later or something, my pager's blowing up. Oh, gotta go stop and use the payphone. Had to have quarters with you, change. And, then you get on the phone and, hey, what's up? Oh, I heard you're out there trying to talk to fucking bitches and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And like, oh, wow, okay. Well, I don't know what to talk about. That's how it was. That's all it always was. And like I said, it was cruising. And like I said, I'm just going over the basics today. But, this is how it really was. And the biggest thing that, I can sit there and go in the beginning, I had the car and everything else like that. And we just went and joyrided. I was 18 and my cousins were 16 and it was like being out there and trying not to get into too much trouble. There was always something going on. And or hopefully the car don't break down or you don't get a flat or battery don't go dead or anything like that. But it was something, in the beginning for me, man, that's all I wanted to do. Like, all I want to do is go cruising. All I want to do is go out there every weekend. We went out there in the rain. We went out there and there was always somebody out there. There was always other cars out there. There was always people out there. And like I said, this is before cell phones. So sometimes you would see or talk to people and you wouldn't even know how to get a hold of them. And you knew the only place you can go to find them would be downtown. Like literally you would walk by people and go, hey, have you seen so-and-so? And they're like, oh, I think they're down the street. And then, hey, have you seen so-and-so? Oh yeah, they're over there around the corner, or they're at the store right there, or at the 7-Eleven. And that's how we would find people. That's how we found our homies and stuff. That's how, we would all meet up. Oh, you gonna be out here tomorrow night? Yeah, I'll be out here about 9:30. Okay, cool. Blah blah blah. That was cruising, and that was the scene. In the mid 90s. And like I said, where I was introduced to low riding was obviously on accident. And when I started, my whole thing, like I built a lowrider bike when I was younger. Me and my cousin, we went half on one, and we got stuff done, and I got the frame and I got the forks, and he'd get parts, and he was responsible for getting it painted, and he was responsible for getting some stuff chromed, and I'd spend some money on different things for it, and whatever. But like I said, we always were just like, let's go cruising. Now it came with, ups and downs, and it came with us either not getting caught or getting in trouble or whatever it may be. But we were always running around doing something. But the place to be, I would even go on dates, and I'd take a girl out to the movies, and then after the movies, you'd be like, what are we going to do? We're going to go cruising, because that's what I like to do. So, but yeah, that I'll get into more later. But as for right now, be out there cruising. It was always end up in a parking lot. So back then, there was only a 7-Eleven, and I think was it Walgreens? I can't even remember now. But the parking lot that's now Target and shopping center in King and Story was just basically there was just a 7-Eleven there, and then it was a big open parking lot. And that would get packed full of people. Everybody just posted up there. And you'd have that parking lot, or you'd have the parking lot at the Pink Elephant grocery store, and or the parking lot right there on between, I think, what is it, 6th Street and Santa Clara. And then eventually McDonald's and all these different parking lots was always fill up. But the best thing, one of the things that would be hyped up about when I go cruising was the cars. And in San Jose, we weren't really too many people hopping, but it was car dancing at the time. So the era that I came up in the lowrider, scene, and when I was out there cruising, it was really what it came down to was the car dancing, and people were building straight up dancers. They'd be out there cruising, and you would see there was a 65 for Brown Impressions, and then there was Danny Torres with his car, and that was Eminence Car Club. And you would see them just like cross paths at an intersection like San Antonio and King. And next thing you know, they're in the middle of the street and they're just battling, full on car off all fours, everything, just straight up car dance battling. So really the funny part is this is one of the reasons why I never really had to go to any car shows, because in San Jose, every weekend was a show. And, if they weren't in the parking lot and people weren't, dancing in the parking lot, they did it in the streets. And, you'd basically sit there in the car and watch them do it or get out. And I mean, this is how live it was there was really, once again, this is before people had camcorders and everybody carried, camera. This is like at night. I mean, you had to be out there to see it. And there was no, you would just hear about it or we'd just talk about it. And then, you'd find out like, where are they going to go? They're going to go to so-and-so's shop, after everybody leaves downtown and stuff like that. And then they would continue to, and we'd be driving around trying to figure out, they said it's going to be over here or it's going to be over there. We got to figure out, well, where the hell that's at, because once again, no GPS, just drive around trying to find out where everybody went, and you'd run into people. Oh yeah, they're over there at the shop off 10th Street. All right, so head out there, and then we get there. Oh, we missed everything, or oh, it's there. We park, So that was how you found everything. It was all word of mouth. It was all just looking for the right people at the right time, and then going out there and just being out there. And that consisted of us going cruising, every weekend. And there was all the drama, and there was all the gang banging and the set tripping and the shit talking, and the whose lady is that, and so on and so forth. But I'm gonna get into all that stuff and all these other stories in the next episode. So as for now, I'm gonna wrap this one up, and stay tuned. Come check out part 2. And yeah, you guys have a good one. Thank you for coming on. And once again, I'm going to dedicate this series, the opening series of my podcast, to my mom. May she rest in peace. I love you. I miss you. It's going to be 5 years. And yeah, fuck cancer. All right, you guys, have a good one.
Pinche's Lowriders.